Thank you, Georgia. It is so good to be back in Georgia and to see so many good friends. Thank you for coming for Jim Martin. It was good to see. It's good to see Congressman Hank Johnson here, and my former congressman and my great friend Buddy Darden, and the other distinguished guests. And as already mentioned by Jim, don't forget that Jim Powell's in this runoff for Georgia Public Service Commissioner. So let's make sure we do that. Jim and Joan Martin have raised a tremendous family, and his brothers and his sisters-in-law are here, and a lot of the children and all of the members of the family. I told him he's going to have a big head start in this runoff if they just get out to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, you realize that the eyes of the nation are on this race here in Georgia. There are 9 days left. But you don't have to wait 9 days. You can vote the first 3 days of this coming week before Thanksgiving. Go out and vote, and if you've already voted, take somebody else to the polls and make sure that they vote. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the importance of this race as I see it. I'm not from Georgia, so I understand that I need your permission to speak about what I believe is at stake, but thank you for inviting me here to do that. But I know Jim Martin, and I want to tell you a little bit about him. He is a man who has fought for the right kinds of changes all through his career. In the legislature, he voted for the largest middle-income tax cut ever in the history of Georgia. He knows who needs tax cuts. He has fought to get health care coverage to people who don't have it today. All these working families who are self-insuring, just one accident or mishap away from bankruptcy. There are people here who know exactly what I'm talking about in personal terms. He has created jobs. He has management experience as running a very large cabinet-level department here in Georgia, implementing some of the same kinds of cost-cutting, trimming, reinventing government measures that we know are necessary when you want to make sure that our democracy works properly for the people who need somebody on their side. You have got to trim the fat and go about it efficiently. And that's what Jim Martin has done. And you know, there's kind of a feeling in this race that it feels good because the enthusiasm in this vast room here is something that's very, very tangible. You can feel it here. And the enthusiasm and the determination and the size of the turnout, that's what will determine the outcome of this race. That's the way runoff races are. And this runoff comes at a moment in our nation's history when America is poised on the threshold of significant change at a time when we've never needed change more than we need it now. So you here in Georgia are making an historically important choice at a moment when your choice is going to matter a lot, because we're in between now. The Bush-Cheney administration is winding down but there are still people in the United States Senate who embody the Bush-Cheney philosophy, and we need to get them out of there in order to I've used this line before, but I would say that it applies to the incumbent senator. It's time for him to go. But let me put it in terms that may be a little more high-minded than that. Seriously now, when you hear on the television news these commentators and anchors lead into a story by saying, not since the Great Depression of 1929 have we seen, and then they go ahead and report the rest of the story. When they start using phrases like that, you know it's time for a change in Georgia. The Bush-Cheney-Chambliss philosophy has been tried and found not only wanting, it has been found out to be a catastrophe for the United States of America. The stock market has been collapsing. People are being laid off from work. They're losing their homes. They're losing their health insurance. And the change that's coming, the incumbent says, I'll block it. I'll try to keep it from coming. Jim Martin knows how to make it better and work with the change to make it good for Georgia. Now I live in Tennessee, and Tennessee and Georgia are neighbors. And we share a history with so many features in common. And way back in the day, there were times when men like Jim Martin were representing the people, fighting for the working men and women, fighting for the middle-income families, bringing about the kind of changes that working families need. And then we went through this long period where you had you've heard it on the talk radio and all this stuff, and then they got control, and they managed to finally put their philosophy in place, and it was Herbert Hoover all over again. We have seen the results. And so what goes around comes around. And the kinds of changes that we need now are the kinds that are in Jim Martin's heart, because he has served his entire lifetime working for others who need a champion. And you know, those of you who've been represented by him, who've been helped by him, he's the real thing. He's the real thing. I honestly don't remember a U.S. Senate race that had such a clear choice, such a clear contrast, coming particularly at a time when that choice will have tremendous implications in saying to the country, yes, in Georgia, we realize it is time to change and start putting government on the side of the people again and not the special interests. You deserve a senator who is not just hanging out with. I read that paper in the story in the Atlanta paper this morning. Did you read that about golfing and lobbyists? Well, let me tell you, one of the changes that needs to be made more than anything else is to break up this system they've developed up there, where the special interest lobbyists get in there and play golf and go to the country clubs with the senators and tell them in between holes what kind of legislation they want to see written next week, and then they bring the money in for these funds that are mixed around there, and then that legislation is what they say is important. That's the kind of thing that needs to be broken up. And that's what people in the United States of America voted to change on November the 4th. Change is coming. Change is coming. Change is coming to Georgia. Change is coming to the South. Coming to America. And the way to get change is to elect Jim Martin, the next United States Senator.